Joined by Steven Caldwell and Kevin Kilbane, Ishmael Kone has a new club, at least for now, moving on loan from Marseille to Rennes. It was a difficult situation for him at Marseille, and we really felt that he needed to make that move, didn't we, before the transfer window closed. In the end, he left it late, but he has moved. He's moved to a relegation battle in Ligue 1. But given the situation, Stevie, at Marseille, where Roberto De Zerbi made it very clear that Ishmael Kone wasn't up to the standards he wanted and wouldn't be playing in the first team, how crucial was this?
Vital, because it was an acrimonious end, as you mentioned there, Luke, with De Zerbi and Kone. So he had to go somewhere to find regular playing time, regular football. And it seems like the choice with him and his representatives is Rennes because of that reason. I think to stay in Ligue 1 was probably important to him, feeling familiar with the league and obviously with the language. And then that regular football probably guaranteed by Rennes in the position that they're in, down near the bottom of Ligue 1 is a bit precarious. So Kone's going to go there. He's going to get time. He's going to get an opportunity to play every week, Kev, and to show the form that we know he's capable of. But I think ultimately it's a case of putting yourself back in the shop window, either for the summer or sometime soon, because as long as De Zerbi's at Marseille, I don't see Ishmael Kone going back there and playing in that team after what happened in the last few months.
Yeah, it looks extremely unlikely, doesn't it? You know what, Stevie? And I think as well, it's not a daunting experience being in a relegation battle as well. It's tough at times, week in, week out. The games are very tough if you've lost one and the next game comes around and you start to maybe get down on yourself, maybe ahead of a game on a Thursday or a Friday if the game were to be a Saturday. It's a tough experience, but I also found it a very good experience as well, because I think it helps you grow as a player. I think it helps you develop as a player, because there's no greater pressure than being in those relegation battles when you're playing for teams. So I think it will help him. I think it'll help his development. And he needed to play. You're right, Stevie. He had to play games. He had to get a run of games now under his belt, given his status in Canadian soccer, given where he is. He simply had to play games ahead of the end of the season. I think it's a good move for him, essentially, to stay in that league, maybe to highlight himself in front of one or two other teams as well. And hopefully it works out for him, because if he gets the game time, I'm convinced with his ability, he will be able to perform.
Kev, we heard some of the other options available to Ishmael Kone could have been Southampton in the Premier League. That's a relegation fight as well, with a team that is really struggling. Fiorentina in Italy, Valencia in Spain. Do you think this might be the right move to stay in France or not?
Well, all the teams were at the wrong end of the table, whichever league he was rumoured to be in. Staying in France, yes, Luke. I think it might be the best move for him. It's where he decided to go and ply his trade after leaving after leaving Watford and going in there to Marseille to decide, look, this is where I want to go. I'm comfortable with the language. I'm comfortable with my surroundings. This is where I want to play. I think Valencia, if I was in his position, and sometimes you hear rumours and they're not necessarily always on the table, but Valencia would be one that would stand out to me, given the size on the club and given the position that they are in. They're struggling at the moment. There's only one way that you feel Valencia are going to go, and the size of that team, that could be something that could have been a great move for him down the line. But in saying that, I think he's probably made a decision, Stevie, based on the fact is this is where I've decided that I'm going to be playing my career or playing my football for the next few years in France. That's where I want to be. And whether he stays at Rennes beyond this season, who knows if they stay up. But I think it'll put him in the window and showcase his ability for a lot of other teams there.
Yeah, I think it was probably down to the fact that there was some kind of guarantee about playing football as well, Kev. I'm not sure the other teams would have gave him that same assurance that he was going to play and he was going to be a regular. And as we've said, that was vitally important. To play week in, week out and try and get into some kind of rhythm of form is vital for Ishmael Kone as he looks towards next summer's World Cup. I always wonder, is England maybe a good place to go? The Premier League's such a high-profile league, and I know Southampton are really struggling. They're a team that are really out of form and look like they're certainly going to be relegated. But you go to England, you play in the Premier League, you're in such a short window, you play a couple of good matches against, top 4, top 6 opposition. It really changes the scope of where you can go, let's say, when the summer comes around. So, I don't know, maybe he looked at that one. Maybe, again, like we mentioned, there was not the same optimal conditions that he needed to succeed. And ultimately the familiarity of being in France, of understanding the language, of probably understanding the league, even though he's only been in it for a short period of time, just meant that Stade Rennais was the best move for him. And now, no matter what, he's got to just roll the sleeves up. He has to show day in, day out that he's capable of leading that midfield, of being a dominant character in there. And then in the matches, he's got to make sure that he plays to his best of his ability and prevents Rennes from going down. They cannot get relegated to a team like that. Signed Kyogo from Celtic as well, spent a bit of money on him. So Rennes have made some moves to make sure that they're in Ligue 1 next year, and Ishmael Kone is going to be a massive part of that.
But Stevie, it's not just about the games, is it? And Kev, I'll come to you on this one, because the way he left in Marseille might be a little bit concerning. Last summer, Ismael Kone did so well, was one of the stars of Canada's run in Copa America. He gets the move from the Championship in England to Marseille, one of the biggest clubs in France. We're talking about how high his ceiling could be, and could he be, in the future, one of the Canadian players who could be playing at one of the biggest clubs in the world on the very biggest stage. How much has his stock fallen because of the comments from Roberto De Zerbi about the fact that he obviously hasn't been doing it in training, and how can he get that back? How can he now convince people and convince those clubs that he isn't what Roberto De Zerbi thinks he is?
Well, in answer to the first point of that question, Luke, his stock has certainly declined, hasn't it, since the summer? After that performance against Uruguay and his performance prior to Copa against France, we saw, oh wow, we've got a potential superstar on our hands here. This is someone that we can watch, and we can really admire the way that his career potentially could go. But we all know, you know as well as I do, Luke, that the pitfalls are there. It's so difficult to maintain levels and standards, particularly when you're at a club like Marseille, and the demands that De Zerbi, the coach, puts on his players day in, day out. It's a real awakening, I think, for a lot of players when you step up to the next level from Championship, or perhaps playing at a club that the expectations aren't as high. To put it simply like that, when you make the step up to the next level, it can be extremely tough. So he's got a long way to go to turn the mindset around, because De Zerbi was so openly critical of him and spoke of the way that he had regarding his application to training, his application to day in, day out, and what he was doing in preparing himself for games. That reverberates around the game. There's many coaches around the game that will constantly speak to each other. That message will now be, look, this guy maybe isn't to be trusted a little bit. I'm not saying that is the case, but that is the message from what De Zerbi is saying. So he has to turn that around with his performances on the pitch. That's the ideal move from what Stevie's saying, that he is going to get game time. He needed those assurances before he signed for Rennes that he was actually going to be playing. But I think there's a long way to go now, Luke, for him to turn that around. I think it's a real difficult situation that he's found himself in with De Zerbi's comments. But the only way that he can do that is by getting as many minutes on the field as he can, creating, scoring goals, the odd goal like we know that he can do, and he's got to be providing in the games. That's the only way that he can turn this situation around.
Yeah, I think consistency and reliability is key with this player, and that's the doubt with some teams. Does he have the consistency and the reliability? His ceiling is so high. He's capable of outstanding performances, but can he do it week in, week out? And can he be reliable within a setup, within a big club setup as well? So these are some of the questions that I think, or the doubt that's kind of came into some clubs' minds, I would say, over his spell at Marseille. He's got to try and eradicate them and show that consistency and reliability in what's a very difficult situation, as we mentioned, down the bottom of Ligue 1.
One of the other Canadians we talked about throughout January and the transfer window, maybe needing a move, was Tajon Buchanan. At the start of the month, it seemed as if he might prefer to stay and fight for his place at Inter Milan. In the end, he's ended up at Villarreal, making the move from Italy to Spain. And maybe a change in formation, Stevie, as well comes into it, in terms of the fact that it's being reported that they will play him as a winger rather than a wing-back. And that presumably is how Jesse Marsch is going to use him as well for Canada. So do you think that comes into it at all in terms of weighing up this move? Is this the right place for Tajon Buchanan right now?
Yeah, I think you've got to take all these things into consideration, Luke. What is the formation? What is the style? Does it suit me? What is the environment? Who's the coach? What are the players? You look at everything as a young player, or as a player that's looking to revitalise a part of their career. You think about all that because you know how important a loan move can be. So I think the assessment by Tajon Buchanan and his representatives has been around what suits me, where can I excel, and where can I also play regular football. So Villarreal are, they're doing really well. There's going to be some stiff competition for places. I'll say that. It's not a guarantee that Tajon Buchanan is going to play and going to get regular minutes, which might be a bit of a concern. But a club 4-4-2, similar to Jesse Marsch. Hopefully he can establish himself again as a winger, which I feel is his best position. I think higher up the field, being able to create, being able to have some assists and some goals to his game, Kev, is vitally important. So again, another kind of wait and see move, another big moment for a Canadian player who has to get his career back on track and show everyone the quality that he's capable of, again, on a consistent and regular basis.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Stevie, that I think there was a huge part of his game that was missing when he was asked to play in the wing-back role. Because if Canada were playing against good sides, when we saw him playing against sides that dominated possession, he was invariably just playing as a right back. You'd rarely see him get over the halfway line with the chance to get one-on-one with the defender or with the left back or whoever it would be. And I think that playing in that system, Stevie, I think it would help him. As long as you get a strong fullback that's behind you as well, don't forget, the fullback that's prepared to allow him to go and express himself on the field, that's comfortable in his own surroundings, that he can take a one-on-one situation himself, that allows Tajon Buchanan to go beyond the opposition and really go and force his hand a little bit. And I think it's a great move for him. I mean, when you go to a club like Villarreal, that, as you say, Stevie, going well and in a position where you're thinking, how much game time actually is he going to get? He has got to prove it on the training ground, and it's something that's really overlooked, I think, probably in the modern game to an extent, that in many respects, yeah, you've got to produce. You've got to try and get minutes on the field. You've got to try and be producing week in, week out, or whenever the games come around. But you have to start on the training ground. You have to apply yourself as soon as you walk through the door. You've got to show the manager that you're willing, or coach, that you're willing to adapt to his style of play, that you're willing to listen to what he wants to say to you, that you're prepared to work day in, day out, that you apply yourself totally 100% going into the games. And if he does that, we know the ability that he's got. And if he is able to go and express himself on the field like we know that he can, I think he could be a bit of a surprise package come the end of the season if he gets the right sort of service and he gets himself in one-on-one positions.
So Kone gets the move, Buchanan gets the move, Alphonso Davies stays where he is. Nothing for Jonathan David either. Is there anything else that stands out from a Canadian perspective, Stevie, as the transfer window closes in Europe?
For me, probably Saliba. We thought that he might get that move to Europe, potentially with a loan back to CF Montreal, but that didn't come about. Maybe smart on his part to wait a little bit longer. Probably not the type of clubs that he would have liked to have moved to waiting there or willing to take him in. So wait a little bit longer. He's got to start the MLS season very well and show his capabilities. And there's certainly a lot of growth to come in his game. Two that I'll look at from Europe, Kev, probably was a little bit of surprise choosing MLS to revitalise their careers, and Theo Corbeano at TFC and Jayden Nelson, ex-TFC man who was playing in Norway back to Vancouver Whitecaps. That is a little bit of a change from the norm where players who are in Europe, young players especially, trying to come back to MLS to establish themselves, get themselves in a shop window. But I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I feel coming back, getting in this shop window, trying to push themselves into Jesse Marsch's squad might be smart to be back in North America at this time and hopefully providing goals and assists on a regular basis to show Jesse Marsch that they're capable of making his 26-man roster.
Yeah, it's a great point on certainly on Jayden Nelson, because we know the hype that was around Jayden Nelson when he was a younger player, and we know the ability that he's got. He just hasn't necessarily been able to put the pieces together to be consistent enough whenever he's played. So him going back to Vancouver, I think they are interesting moves, Stevie, because what's Jesse Marsch going to be doing? Jesse Marsch has to be monitoring a core of 50 players or however many it's going to be, and every week he can't be monitoring fully a lot of the lesser leagues around Europe. I think he's going to have more of an eye on the MLS. It certainly keeps him right in Jesse Marsch's mind. Certainly with the year ahead that we've got. I think aside of that, Steve, there was nothing else. I mean, obviously David and the Davies move was something that we were both looking at. They were unlikely to happen. They seemed unlikely to happen before the window opened. But we'll monitor that now in the next few months to see how it goes. But I think it has been a decent window for the Canadian side. Certainly with Kone moving, getting game time, and Buchanan, those are two big players for Canada, and they're going to be big players come 2026 when we open up the World Cup.
Well, the speculation can stop now for at least a few weeks anyway, with the transfer window closed. Some of these players have new clubs, some are still where they were, but they'll all be hoping that over the course of the next few weeks their club form will be good, and that when they come into camp in March for what is a huge game, the Nations League semi-final with Canada, that they are at the top of their game.